Good evening, it's 8 o'clock. The top headlines tonight on the news. 3 Indian vaccines are cleared for children today. Covaxin for 6 to 12 years old, Corbevax for 5 to 12 years old and 2 doses of Zycov-D approved for 12 plus. The 3 vaccines approved in one day as cases rise in schools across India. The Congress PK breakup, it's over for now. PK unhappy with being one of an empowered group for 2024. Sonia Gandhi, meanwhile, had laid down defined responsibility for PK. He tweets, "I declined the offer. The Congress needs transformational reforms, not just me." The climate emergency in India, heat waves, coal shortages and record power cuts across parts of India. The Big Bang LIC IPO, exclusive details on NDTV before the official press conference tomorrow. The price band is likely to be between 902 to 949 rupees and this will open from the 2nd of May. Elon Musk's Twitter takeover. "I welcome even my worst critics on the platform," he says in his statement after Twitter accepts his offer. Twitter founder Jack Dorsey says Musk is the singular solution. Meanwhile, Amazon's Bezos slide tweets the China angle, referring to Tesla's China trade, and CEO Parag Agrawal could walk with $42 million. The Supreme Court stuffed questions on hate speech to 2 states. They ask why the Himachal hate speeches at the Dharam Sansad, why no deterrent by the government. Also, what preventive measures did the states of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand take? Both states now ordered to file affidavits. But first, let's go across the big political story of the day. After all those months of, well, will he, won't he, the possibility of him being the key political advisor to the Congress President Sonia Gandhi, dealing directly with Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi, it's now all fizzled out. Nidhi has the latest on this. Nidhi, why exactly did the Congress PK deal break up?
Well, both sides today announced in some cryptic tweets that it was all over. Randeep Surjewala of the Congress was the first to do it. Interestingly, he did talk about a defined role for Prashant Kishor, and then Prashant Kishor tweeted subsequently. But here are pretty much the 5 reasons why this has happened. One is that Prashant Kishor, of course, wanted full control of the Congress before 2024, but the Congress instead had just offered him a seat on this empowered group that they had announced yesterday. And, you know, someone like Prashant Kishor, he's mercurial, he's volatile, he likes being directly in touch with leaders, like with the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, when he was running his campaign, or Nitish Kumar or Amrinder Singh in Punjab. So he doesn't like being part of a larger group where there might be checks and balances and he may have to take other people along. Secondly, I think a lot of Congress leaders were also wary about handing the party over to a political strategist, someone who was not ideologically in sync necessarily with the Congress. After all, Prashant Kishor has worked with a range of political parties, including the BJP and other political rivals. It also comes at a time when Rahul Gandhi is MIA. He's been abroad now for the last 10-12 days and been unreachable from what we hear. Priyanka Gandhi, though, was enthusiastic about PK's entry. Sonia Gandhi, however, was the one who had to take the final decision. And even though she was believed to be enthusiastic about it earlier, ended up, cutting him down to size. Then there was also the issue of Prashant Kishor's weekend meeting at KCR's house in Hyderabad. The TRS is the Congress's rival in the state, and that irked a big section of the leadership, which again sort of used it as another stick to beat Prashant Kishor with in terms of the trust factor. But also, if you look at PK's relationship with the Congress, it actually has seen a lot of ups and downs in the last few years. He was handling the UP campaign for them along with the SP in 2017. That, we know, didn't go well at all. The Congress lost very, very badly in that election. In 2020, the Congress had reportedly approached him again, but they didn't really make any headway. Then in October of 2021, Prashant Kishor spoke on Rahul Gandhi, saying it's just a matter of time. He thinks it's just a matter of time when people will reject Modi. A little later, he made a dig at the Congress as well in a tweet saying that there are no quick fixes to deep-rooted problems. If you look at that tweet, in fact, he talked about, that they had no divine right, of an individual especially. The leadership is not a divine right of an individual. And in fact, before I replay what he said about the Congress in a very recent interview to Srinivasan Jain on NDTV, today there were two more interesting tweets that were put out. One was by Navjot Singh Sidhu, of all people, to tweet today. Navjot Sidhu, who's been a big problem for the Congress in Punjab, he tweeted a picture of himself with Prashant Kishor. It looks like they met today, had a wonderful meeting. And so, some in the Congress turning around and saying, well, we told you that PK was going to be another Sidhu. And we know that, Sidhu's reputation is not stellar at the moment. And Milind Deora also putting out a cryptic sort of Bob Dylan tweet about, which way the wind is blowing. So it's been a rocky relationship, and literally, just a couple of months ago when PK spoke to us, this is what he had said about the Congress and about Rahul Gandhi at that time.
Last 10-12 years,
right.
Congress in the present formation is not winning anything.
Okay, but
so yes, they can remain the opposition party, but they
sure.
are not winning anything. They win election. They are winning election only till the result day. So you hear the senior Congress leaders, they are talking about they are winning this state, they are winning that state, they are winning, and call them on the election result day, they will all run away. And for my side, I can tell you, but I had a bad experience working with Congress in UP.
Yes.
And hence, many things which otherwise I would have said yes, I was more skeptical, because I didn't want to get in a situation where I get in, I take the responsibility and I feel my hands are tied or I'm not able to do something.
So let's see what the next chapter or what the next page happens. As of now, it's over, but again, lots of time for 2024. So the Prashant Kishor Congress chapter may not be finally closed yet. Meanwhile, the other really important headline, and this is coming as COVID cases are rising in India slowly but steadily. So today, India approved the use of 3 Made in India vaccines for children. Here are the details. So basically now children from the age of 5 to 12 years old have choice on which vaccines they can actually use. Their parents can have the choice on which vaccines they can actually use. Very important at a time when cases are rising in schools among children across India.
In a huge development, Bharat Biotech and Biological E have been granted restricted emergency use of Covaxin for children aged between 6 and 12 and Corbevax for those aged between 5 and 12 years. However, the National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization has said they're yet to decide on the pricing of the vaccine and that the rollout of the vaccine could begin in a week. And this is the first time vaccines have been approved for this age group. Union Minister Mansukh Mandavia also said the emergency use authorization has also been granted to Cadila for its Zycov-D with a 2-jab inoculation for those aged above 12 years. Previously, Zycov-D was administered in 3 doses. J.T. Srikanta, who is a pediatrician in Karnataka and who was also heading the Technical Advisory Committee that was formed to oversee the preparations for the pediatric population during the second wave of COVID, says it is a welcome move with the variant of Omicron becoming predominant.
Only 175 children in each arm were vaccinated or taken for the study. So between 6 to 12 years, 2 to 6 years, as well as 12 to 18 years, only 175 children were taken for vaccination. They were given vaccination at day 1 as well as day 28, and the seropositivity was looked at 4 weeks later, and they found a significant number of children, that is almost all the children, had 1.7 times more antibodies compared to the adult population.
The authorization from the Drugs Controller General of India comes at a time when there are growing concerns of the 4th wave of COVID-19 across the country, and especially in Delhi, with a spike in children being infected with COVID, as the capital reported an increase of 156% of COVID cases as compared to last week.
Most of the parents are reluctant. They're not coming forward to get their kids vaccinated. It has to be done because safety matters much, and it is a pandemic. We have to fight with it.
With regular classes on, parents hope that they don't see cluster breakouts happening in institutions.
As most institutes have decided to operate physically coming session onwards. But we as parents should keep ourselves informed.
If all the kids in the school actually having the vaccination, probably it will be, we feel safe actually
for our kids. Few concerns also are there because it's an emergency approval is there for the vaccination. We don't know what is the trials results are there, whether the trial results are available in the public domain or not.
In Bengaluru, with Meher Shrija for NDTV.
And let's just look at the latest on India's COVID numbers. Currently, we're at nearly 2,500 cases. Backlog deaths have been reported in the last 24 hours. So our cases are 2,483. Deaths at 1,399. But remember, that's a huge backlog of cases coming in from Assam mainly. Tests are up by nearly 48.6. That's good news. The positivity rate is well below 1% at 0.55%. So no need to worry yet, but we need to be prepared. So more vaccines are good news. In fact, as we discuss COVID, the real issue seems to be India's climate change emergency with multiple heat waves across different parts of India. It's affecting crops, it's causing forest fires. Also, coal supply is dipping amongst a serious power shortage as we're hitting record power demand. So we are seeing across India, there are forest fires being reported, power shortage, coal supply dipping and multiple heat waves across parts of India.
Power cuts rising across India amid the intense, unprecedented heat. In Unnao, just 50 kilometers from Uttar Pradesh's capital Lucknow, 5 to 10 hour long power cuts mean losses for small businessmen like Subhash Chandra, who runs a paper binding unit.
जब लाइट नहीं आती तो कारोबार भी नहीं हो रहा है, इस वजह बहुत समस्या है। कारखाने में जो है कारोबार नहीं होगा तो काम कैसे चलेगा। मैनुअली काम किया जा रहा है, ज्यादा वर्कर लगाने पड़ रहे हैं। अब जैसे कटिंग मशीन में काम करना है, जो काम 10 मिनट में हो जाता है वो काम 1 घंटे में हो रहा है। तो इस तरीके की समस्याओं से हम लोग जूझ रहे हैं और ये अभी नहीं है, तकरीबन 15-20 दिन से बहुत ज्यादा दिक्कत हो।
500 kilometers away, in this rural part of eastern UP's Ghazipur, the situation is worse.
इस समय जो बिजली हम लोग के आ रही है, कम से कम 4 से 5 घंटा रह रही है, इससे ज़्यादा बिजली नहीं आ रही है और वो भी रुक के आ रही है, कभी आधा घंटा रह रही है, कभी 10 मिनट रह रही है, कभी 1 घंटा रह रही है, ऐसे बिजली आ रही है हम लोग के यहाँ।
पहले हम लोग को 18 घंटा यहाँ पे बिजली चलाना होता है, गर्मी के कारण सर हम लोग बिजली नहीं चला पा रहे हैं।
Uttar Pradesh's new power minister, the ex-PMO bureaucrat A.K. Sharma, has blamed the intense heat for the situation. In Rajasthan, among the worst affected states, small-scale industrial units are badly hit by power supply that's interrupted time and again.
आज की तारीख में उद्योग पहले ही कोरोना 19 के चक्कर के अंदर संकट के अंदर है। अब बिजली कटिंग होने से और संकट हो जाएगी। लेबर की बहुत बड़ी समस्या हमारे साथ पहले ही हो चुकी है, अब ऑलरेडी चल रही है हमारे पास में। अब गवर्नमेंट को इसका ध्यान देना चाहिए, उद्योगों को विशेष रूप से कुछ न कुछ रियायत भी बिजली में करनी चाहिए, बिजली पूरी उपलब्ध करवानी चाहिए।
In Srinagar, locals like shop owner Mehrajuddin say a crisis like this is unprecedented, especially with Eid just days away.
इतनी प्रॉब्लम होती है पावर की वजह से, हमारा बिजनेस भी ठप हो गया। हम दूध लाते हैं, दूध खराब हो जाता है, आइसक्रीम बाकी कोल्ड ड्रिंक सारा बिजनेस ठप हो गया है क्योंकि ये ज़्यादा पावर पर ही चलता है। कभी दिन में पावर आता है तो फिर 1 घंटा आता है, उसके बाद पता ही नहीं चलता कब आएगा। माह रमज़ान में हमारे इतना परेशानी हो गई, शहरी में या इफ्तार में रहता ही नहीं पावर।
But as on date, since the Bagliar and other these projects, they are not generating to their optimum. So we are expecting as soon as the discharge increase, we will be in a position to get something.
So all depends on the availability from outside, the other in the rest of the country, and also our water resources, local generation.
A harsh summer lies ahead for many across India. With Harsha Kumari Singh and Nazir Masoodi, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Well, moving to other news, in news that really has transformed the tech and the social messaging space, the Elon Musk offer of $44 billion to buy Twitter was accepted early this morning. So Elon Musk in his statement has talked about a digital town square. The big question, how will Twitter actually change under Musk? Well, for one, its content moderation policy is likely to change. In fact, it may just be thrown away. He had earlier called this as stifling free speech. Also, banned users, including ex-President Trump of the United States, may be allowed back. In March this year, he had suggested that Twitter's algorithm should be open source. Let's see if that actually happens. And also, what happens to Twitter's future in India? Now, India has clashed with Twitter on a series of occasions recently over hate speech and India's new IT laws. But what the IT minister told NDTV is that the expectations of accountability remain the same, whoever the owner. Remember, Elon Musk has said that he's going to take Twitter private. The US president's spokesman has also said that the president has been concerned earlier about the amount of power social media firms have. For India, of course, it's of great interest because we have 23.6 million Twitter users. That's the third highest globally.
The world's richest man has got what he wanted. Twitter. For $44 billion, almost a half of it raised against his own equity. Musk, who got rich inventing cutting-edge space and EV technologies, tweeted this, along with his plan to change Twitter. He considers Twitter the bedrock of a functioning democracy. Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. He's promised to make the algorithms open source to increase trust, defeat the spam bots, and perhaps controversially authenticate all humans. Twitter will go from public-owned to private by the end of the year, as Elon Musk's plan to acquire Twitter is approved by the Twitter board, still subject to regulatory approval. Musk believes that Twitter should follow local laws.
What I can tell you as a general matter, no matter who owns or runs Twitter, the president has long been concerned about the power of large social media platforms, the power they have over our everyday lives, has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms they cause.
India, with 23.6 million, has the third highest Twitter base after US, where the relatively small platform punches above its weight. Twitter has repeatedly gone against the government over censorship. However, Musk's suggestion of adhering to local laws suggests that Twitter will follow the Indian government's policies despite the controversy over censorship and curbing of free speech. The Indian IT minister told NDTV, and I quote, that I wish Elon Musk the very best. Our goals and expectations of accountability, safety and trust of all intermediaries operating in India remains unchanged. Musk's acquisition of Twitter has happened in less than 3 months since he began buying its stock. Twitter founder Jack Dorsey tweeted his support for Musk, saying, "In principle, I don't believe anyone should own or run Twitter, solving the problem of it being a company. However, Elon is the single solution I trust." Dorsey added that Twitter's dependence on the Wall Street and ad revenue was detrimental to the platform. However, Jeff Bezos, Amazon founder and fellow multi-billionaire, suggested that China might have gained leverage over Twitter. The platform has been blocked in China since 2009, but China is the second largest market for Musk-owned Tesla and one of the largest suppliers of batteries to the company. While the acquisition might have been agreed upon, by all appearances, it looks like the Musk-Twitter controversy will continue to be in the spotlight for the future. Rubina Mungia, NDTV.
Well, let's move to other big news, and that's LIC, which will announce its initial public offering details tomorrow. The government is likely to cut the IPO size to 21,000 crores. Sunil Prabhu has more details on what actually is going to be happening, that official press conference tomorrow by the LIC chairman. Sunil, what have you heard?
Well, Sonia, 2-3 important points. One, of course, is that the price band is 902 to 949. It will be in lots of 14. And those who are employees as well as retail investors will get a discount of 45 rupees. For policy holders, it's 60 rupees. The IPO will start on the 2nd, close on the 9th. For anchor investors, the first day. Officially, of course, for people like you and me who would like to invest, it's from the 4th to the 9th. What does this mean? They've allowed 3.5% stake in LIC, but the board can definitely, depending on how it is, institutional investors, anchor investors go about it, they can increase it by probably another 1.5. So if at present valuation it is 21,000 crores, it can go up to 30,000 crores. That's a call that the board will take in consultation with the finance ministry. This is, of course, India's largest IPO in comparison to what has happened
In fact, Sunil, just to ask about that also, because this is really key to the government's whole disinvestment plans. But we know that, of course, there's been worries. I mean, the Ukraine war is something which has thrown the government's timing. There's much speculation over whether the government would stick to its original plans and valuations. Yet they've decided to go ahead, though they have cut their initial plans. What's the government thinking on this?
Well, very interesting that you asked this question. In fact, the government had valued it much higher. And if you look at private insurance companies like ICICI or HDFC, their valuation is 2 to 3 times much higher. Here it is pegged at around just 1.1, if I'm not mistaken. And it's in that backdrop that the government really went through that entire process. The idea was to get more public participation, and that's the reason why this has been in the making for a very, very long time. The LIC is a very old organization, not been accountable to the great extent to the rigors of financial control. It has a finger as a financial institution across the corporate world, and it will be very interesting to see how it plays out in the next few days.
Sunil, thanks so much for that update. So those are the details we have right now of that pricing, the timing, interesting, risky, but the government deciding to go ahead with its ambitious plans. There will likely to be political opposition, of course, because LIC really one of the jewels, as Sunil just pointed out, of our public sector whole industry. Let's just go across now to the other news of Foreign Minister Jaishankar speaking at the Raisina Dialogue in an interactive session. Interesting comments made by Mr. Jaishankar, especially as he was questioned in the interactive session by two counterparts, two foreign ministers of European countries. Here's what he said Europe should actually be doing, looking at Asia, not India looking at Europe.
In particularly the last 2 years, since we've had the last physical meeting of the Raisina Dialogue, we've really had some big shocks. You know, COVID was a shock. Afghanistan was a shock. Ukraine is a shock. In a sense, the sharper friction between big powers, between the West and Russia, between the United States and China, these two have added to it. I think where the conflict in Ukraine is concerned, we have a fairly clear position that has been articulated, a position which emphasizes the urgent cessation of fighting, which urges a return to diplomacy and dialogue, which stresses the need to respect sovereignty and territorial integrity of states. I mean, you spoke about Ukraine. I could also, I remember less than a year ago what happened in Afghanistan, where an entire civil society was thrown under the bus by the world. I would say, quite honestly, all of us would like to find the right balance of our beliefs, of our interests, of our experience, and that's really what we're all trying to do. And it looks different from different parts of the world. The priorities are different. That's quite natural. Quite candidly, we've been hearing for the last 2 months a lot of arguments from Europe, saying, you know, there are things happening in Europe, and Asia should worry about it because these could happen in Asia. Guess what? Things have been happening in Asia for the last 10 years. Now, Europe may not have looked at it. So you know, this could be a wake-up call for Europe, not just in Europe. It could be a wake-up call for Europe to also look at Asia.
The other big headline, the Supreme Court's tough questions on allowing hate speech of two state governments, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. The Supreme Court asked why Himachal Dharam Sansad, which was held recently in Himachal Pradesh, was allowed to go ahead with speeches being made which were extremely communal, asking why no deterrent by the state government. Both Himachal Pradesh and the Uttarakhand state governments have now been asked to file affidavits in the Supreme Court saying what the steps are which they had taken against hate speech. The first focus on this, of course, came at the Hardwar Dharam Sansad, where again extremely communal statements were made and no action, tough action was taken by the state government or the state police.